The tray almost hit the floor. Kaelion Bay caught it just in time. 3 plates of loaded fries, 2 cheeseburgers, 1 strawberry shake. Caught it with both hands shaking, breath locked somewhere behind his ribs, feet swollen inside shoes 2 sizes too tight. He stood frozen in the middle of the Black Lantern Grill dinner rush. 6:12 p.m. The worst possible moment. Because the front door had just opened. And the man walking through it was the last person on Earth Kaelion ever expected to see standing inside a broke-down diner on the south side of Chicago. Draven Torrick. Billionaire. Alpha King. His husband. The man whose name Kaelion had stopped letting himself say out loud somewhere around month 4. The restaurant noise kept moving around him, oil popping, plates clanking, somebody arguing over a wrong order near table 9. But Kaelion's entire body had gone completely still. The baby kicked hard. Right then. Like the child already knew. Like something cellular recognized the man standing 40 feet away in a tailored black coat surrounded by 3 bodyguards and 2 men in expensive suits. Draven hadn't looked up yet. That gave Kaelion maybe 8 seconds. Hi viewers. If you found out the person you loved most had been looking for you the entire time you spent hiding from them, what would you do first? Drop it in the comments because that answer says everything. He turned toward the back hallway. Fast. Head down. The oversized uniform shirt covered most of the pregnancy. 8 months was hard to hide completely, but Kaelion had gotten good at angles. At keeping his back to tables. At tying his apron high and moving quick enough that nobody looked twice. He had survived 18 months on small tricks like that. Cheap baby socks bought from a gas station 2 blocks over. Canned soup heated on a hot plate inside the storage room where he slept. Conversations whispered to his stomach at 2 a.m. when the restaurant went quiet and the cleaning supply smell got to be too much and the loneliness pressed in so heavy he needed something, anything, to feel less alone. You're going to be okay, he used to tell the baby. I promise. Either of us needs him. He almost believed it. Almost. The storage room door was 10 feet away. 9. 8. Kaelion. 1 word. Low. Quiet enough that nobody else in the restaurant caught it. But Kaelion's feet stopped moving like the sound had cut straight through his spine. He didn't turn around. He couldn't. Because if he turned around and Draven's face looked the way it sounded, controlled, unreadable, cold the way it always went cold before something irreversible happened, Kaelion wasn't sure his legs would hold. The baby kicked again. Harder this time. Kaelion. His name again. Same voice. But something different underneath it now. Something cracked. Something that had no business being inside a voice like Draven Torrick's. He turned. Draven stood 6 feet away. Not 40 anymore. He had crossed the restaurant without Kaelion hearing a single step. The bodyguards had stopped at the entrance. The business associates hadn't moved either. It was just Draven now, all 6 feet 3 inches of him, standing in the middle of the Black Lantern Grill with his jaw tight and his eyes locked on the very visible roundness beneath Kaelion's apron. The restaurant kept moving around them. But between them, everything had stopped. Draven's expression didn't look cold. It looked like something had just broken open behind his eyes and he hadn't decided yet whether to hide it. Kaelion's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then Draven said the 3 words that rearranged everything Kaelion thought he understood about the last 18 months of his life. I never left. Nobody in the Black Lantern Grill understood what was happening. To them, it looked like a rich man in an expensive coat staring down a tired diner worker. Maybe a bad date. Maybe a complicated history. People minded their own plates. But Kaelion understood exactly what was happening. His body understood first. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. The tray was gone. Someone had taken it from him, probably Deshaun from the kitchen, who had been watching from the pass-through window with wide eyes for the last 30 seconds. Kaelion's back was pressed against the hallway wall now, and Draven was too close, and the baby was moving constantly, restless, like the child could feel the shift in the air. Draven's eyes hadn't left his stomach. That was the part that scared Kaelion most. Not anger. Not disgust. Not the cold shutdown expression Kaelion had memorized during 2 years of marriage. That look Draven used when he was done with a conversation, done with a room, done with a person. This was different. This looked like devastation trying to hold itself together inside a tailored coat. "You look," Draven started. "Don't." Kaelion cut it off fast. His voice came out smaller than he wanted. "Whatever you're about to say, don't." Draven's jaw tightened. "You're exhausted. I'm working. You're 8 months pregnant, working a double shift in a diner. 9 days from 9 months. The correction came out before Kaelion could stop it. "And it's none of your business." Something moved across Draven's face at that. Something quick and painful that he killed before it finished. Near the kitchen pass-through, Deshawn stepped out to check on Kaelion. He was a big guy. Broad shoulders, kind eyes, always the first to help when Kaelion's back gave out near closing time. He set one hand gently on Kaelion's arm. "You good? You need to sit down?" That was all. One hand. One sentence. But Draven's entire body changed. It wasn't loud. Draven didn't raise his voice. He didn't move aggressively. But something in the room shifted the way pressure shifts before weather turns violent, slow, total, and impossible to ignore. His eyes moved to Deshawn's hand on Kaelion's arm. Then back to Deshawn's face. Deshawn removed his hand and stepped back without fully understanding why. "Smart man." "I'm fine," Kaelion said quickly. "Thank you, Deshawn." "I'm fine." Deshawn disappeared back toward the kitchen. The moment he was gone, Kaelion turned back to Draven. "You cannot do that. You don't get to come in here after 18 months and... I've been looking for you." Draven's voice was flat. But his eyes weren't. "For 14 months. Every investigator I had. Every connection in the network. You disappeared so completely I thought." He stopped. The word he didn't say hung there between them. Dead. He thought Kaelion was dead. Kaelion's throat tightened. "You divorced me." "No." One word. No hesitation. "Draven. I held the papers. I read them. Your signature was forged." His eyes finally came up from the stomach. Locked onto Kaelion's. Every seal. Every line. "Our bond record was altered inside Torrick Holdings before the documents ever reached you." The dinner rush kept moving behind them. Someone laughed loud at table 12. Kaelion's voice came out barely above a whisper. "You're saying someone faked our divorce?" Draven didn't blink. "I'm saying someone inside my own empire spent 18 months making sure you believed I threw you away." The baby went completely still. Then Draven's eyes dropped back to Kaelion's stomach. And this time, when he looked up, there was nothing controlled about his expression at all. "How long have you been living here?" Kaelion didn't answer. Draven looked at the uniform. The worn shoes. The bruises across both wrists from trays and heavy supply boxes and a storage room floor that didn't have enough padding to sleep on safely. "Kaelion. 7 months." The answer came out before the defense could catch it. Something crossed Draven's face that Kaelion had never seen on him before. Guilt. Raw, unguarded, consuming guilt. Then the front window of the Black Lantern grill exploded inward. Glass everywhere. Nobody screamed at first. The sound came too fast for screaming. Just the sharp crack, the spray of shards across the nearest tables, the sick metallic thud of something hitting the wall above the hostess stand. Then the screaming started. Draven moved before the second sound landed. His arm came around Kaelion completely, not grabbing, not rough, but total. Absolute. His body turning to put himself between Kaelion and the broken window while his other hand was already at his ear, one word into the earpiece. Now. The 3 bodyguards at the entrance moved instantly. 2 toward the window. 1 directly to Draven's left side, blocking the angle from the street. Kaelion's heart was slamming so hard he felt it in his throat. What was that? Don't talk. Move. Draven steered him toward the back hallway, hand flat and steady between his shoulder blades, walking close enough that Kaelion could feel the tension coiled through every muscle. The storage room door. Draven pushed it open, scanned the space in 2 seconds, then pulled Kaelion inside and shut the door behind them. The room smelled like bleach and cardboard. A folded blanket sat on top of a flattened packing box in the corner. A small hot plate. A plastic bag from a pharmacy. Tiny socks, yellow, folded in pairs, sitting on top of a duffel bag that held everything Kaelion owned. Draven stood very still. He looked at the blanket on the floor. At the hot plate. At the yellow socks. And something in his expression became very quiet in a way that was louder than anything he could have said. You've been sleeping in here. Not a question. I was safe. You were sleeping on the floor of a storage room. His voice stayed level. Completely level. The kind of level that meant everything underneath it was anything but. 8 months pregnant. Alone. I didn't have a choice. You had a husband. I had divorce papers. Kaelion's voice cracked on the last word and he hated himself for it immediately. He turned away, pressing one hand to the base of his back where the ache had gone constant. I had papers with your name on them, Draven. I had a signature I recognized. I had. Someone in my company built those documents to destroy you. Draven moved closer. Stopped when Kaelion's shoulders tensed. I hired forensic investigators 10 days after you disappeared. It took them 4 months to uncover the first layer. Altered bond records inside the legal division. Fake certification seals. Somebody inside Torrick Holdings spent real money and real time making sure those papers looked legitimate. Kaelion turned around slowly. Why? I don't have a complete answer yet. That's not good enough. I know. The silence between them shifted. Kaelion thought about the bus station. The night he left. The papers in one hand, $22 in the other, not telling anyone where he was going because he genuinely believed Draven had resources everywhere, and if Draven wanted him gone, he needed to be gone completely. He thought about the first shelter. The second. The third. Finding this job. Convincing the manager to let him use the storage room. Learning to sleep on his side with the blanket folded twice for padding. Telling himself every single night that he had survived worse. I threw the wedding ring into the Chicago River, Kaelion said quietly. Draven didn't flinch. But his hands, both of them, closed into fists at his sides. Month 3. Kaelion continued. I kept it too long. I kept it because... He stopped. Exhaled. It doesn't matter. It matters. Draven. A sound outside the storage room door. Both of them went quiet immediately. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Not the quick rush of restaurant staff during a crisis. These were measured steps. Someone who wasn't panicking. Someone who had come specifically toward this room. And stopped directly outside it. Either of them breathed. Kaelion's hand moved instinctively to his stomach. Draven stepped in front of him without a word, not dramatic, not performative, just automatic, the way a body moves when the decision has already been made somewhere deeper than thought. The footsteps didn't move away. Draven reached slowly for his phone. One message. Sent without sound. 10 seconds. The storage room door opened from the outside. Draven's hand shot out. It's me. Remy, one of the bodyguards, held both hands visible. He was breathing hard. Clear outside. 2 shooters. Gone before we could make contact. No casings left behind. He looked at Kaelion once, then back at Draven. Professional. Draven said nothing for a moment. Then, this wasn't random. No, sir. Kaelion's mouth had gone dry. He looked between them. This has happened before. Both men went quiet in a way that answered the question. How long? Kaelion said slowly. Have you been followed? Draven turned back to face him. Something shifted in his expression. How long have you? The question landed wrong. Because the honest answer was going to change everything. Kaelion leaned back against the storage shelves. His feet were killing him. The baby had gone quiet now. That deep, still quiet that happened when Kaelion's stress went past a certain point, like the child was waiting. 3 months, he said. Maybe closer to 4. At first I thought it was nothing. Somebody standing near the bus stop too long. A car that turned the same direction twice. He paused. My locker was broken into 6 weeks ago. Nothing taken. Just opened. Searched. Draven's jaw tightened. I changed shelters twice before I found this place. I thought I was being careful enough. You were. Draven's voice was quieter now. You were careful enough that it took my investigators over a year to find you. But whoever has been following you isn't working alone, and they have access to resources that shouldn't exist outside my network. The implication settled over the room like something cold. Someone inside Draven's empire was feeding information to whoever was watching Kaelion. Which meant the forged divorce papers and the surveillance were connected. Which meant this wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was a plan. Kaelion looked down at his stomach. They're not following me, he said slowly. Are they? Draven didn't answer immediately. That pause was its own kind of answer. Why would anyone want to hurt a baby that nobody even knew existed? Kaelion said. His voice stayed flat. Controlled. He had learned flat and controlled the hard way. Unless they knew before I did. I need to get you out of this building, Draven said. Tonight. Draven. Tonight, Kaelion. He crouched down without warning, right there on the storage room floor, one knee down. Not performing anything. Not making a speech. He pressed one careful hand against the side of Kaelion's stomach and went completely still. The baby moved. One slow roll. Then a kick, sharp and clear, directly against Draven's palm. Something crossed Draven's face that Kaelion had never once seen in 2 years of marriage. Draven looked undone. Completely. He stayed like that for 3 seconds. Then stood. His expression locked back into control. But his eyes were wet, and he didn't try to hide it. Nobody is touching him, Draven said. Not a promise. A declaration. Remy moved first toward the back exit. Draven stayed beside Kaelion as they moved through the hallway, one hand never leaving the space between his shoulder blades. Outside, rain had started, cold, heavy, the kind of rain that blurred headlights. A black SUV waited at the curb. Kaelion climbed in. The door closed. And as the vehicle pulled away from the only shelter he had known for 7 months, Kaelion caught movement in his peripheral vision. A figure. Standing at the far edge of the alley. Not running. Not hiding. Just watching. Then the rain swallowed him whole. The penthouse was 73 floors up. Kaelion stood at the window and looked at Chicago spread out beneath him. Lights blurred by rain, traffic that looked like moving sparks from this height, the lake somewhere past the dark edge of the skyline. The glass was warm under his hand. Floor to ceiling. Clean. He had not stood in a room this clean in 18 months. The living room behind him had cream furniture, and low lighting and a kitchen that probably cost more than everything he had earned at the Black Lantern Grill combined. His duffel bag sat near the entrance like a bad joke. Small and beaten and completely wrong for the space. Someone had placed a glass of water and a bowl of fruit on the counter nearest to him. He hadn't asked for it. That meant Draven had told someone. Which meant Draven had been watching him long enough tonight to notice he hadn't eaten. Kaelion didn't know what to do with that. The security team moved through the penthouse in shifts, 4 men, rotating, quiet and professional. Draven had introduced one of them directly. Silas Wren. Tall. Calm the way still water was calm, deep and unreadable underneath. He had nodded at Kaelion once and said, "I'll be on your floor overnight," and then stepped back without making it complicated. Kaelion noticed Draven watching that interaction. Not obviously. But the way Draven watched everything, from the edge of a room, from behind a controlled expression, cataloging everything with those dark eyes. When Silas moved to check the hallway, Draven's gaze followed him for 2 seconds longer than was necessary. Kaelion filed that away. He turned from the window. "I don't need a babysitter." Draven looked up from the table where he had spread what appeared to be a series of printed documents. "Silas is head of your security detail. Not yours personally." "Then why is he on my floor specifically?" "Because that's where the risk concentrates." Kaelion moved toward the couch. Sitting down took longer than it used to. The weight redistributed slowly, his back grateful for cushions that actually cushioned. He pressed both hands against his stomach and watched Draven's eyes track the movement, and then looked deliberately away. "You never slept," Kaelion said. "I sleep. In the car tonight you had your eyes open the entire time. Remy checked in 4 times and you answered before he finished each sentence." He paused. "You haven't stopped moving since that window broke." Draven set down the papers. "Someone just fired at you in a public building. Someone fired at me 3 months ago too. Near the Garfield shelter. I didn't know what it was at the time. I thought it was something else. Street noise." He exhaled. It wasn't street noise. Draven's expression went very still. "I'm telling you now," Kaelion said, "because you asked for truth. I don't know how much of it I'm ready to give you yet. But that part, you needed to know." Silence. Draven stood up from the table. Walked toward the window Kaelion had been standing at and stayed there with his back to the room. "I built this penthouse 4 years ago," he said. "I used it twice. After you disappeared I stopped using it completely." Kaelion said nothing. "There's a room," Draven continued, still facing the window. "Off the east hallway. I had it designed. I never told you about it because—" He stopped. Seemed to reconsider. "It doesn't matter why. Draven. I'll show you tomorrow." He turned back toward the table. Picked up the documents again. The conversation was closed. Or it should have been. But then Kaelion heard it. Low enough that it shouldn't have carried from the hallway. 2 guards. Brief exchange. Professional shorthand that people used when they thought nobody outside the conversation was listening. "Confirmation on the bloodline status?" A pause. "Positive. The heir must never be born." Kaelion's blood went cold. He looked at his stomach. Then at the hallway door. Then at Draven's back across the room, still facing his papers, unaware. The heir. Not the baby. Not the child. The heir. The document was sealed with a wax stamp that had not been used in 11 years. Draven broke it open at 3 a.m. while Kaelion slept down the hall, and what he found inside made him sit completely still for 4 minutes without moving. 4 minutes. That mattered. Because Draven Torrick did not sit still. The records were old, family archive level, the kind that didn't exist in any digital system, The kind that only existed in physical form inside a fireproof vault that only 3 people in the world knew the location of. Draven had requested them 6 days ago after his forensic team traced the bond record manipulation back to the original Torrick family charter. What he was reading now changed the entire shape of everything. The Torrick bloodline succession clause. Written in 1987 by his grandfather. Buried deliberately. The clause was specific, almost uncomfortably specific, like someone had written it knowing exactly what kind of war it would eventually cause. Any direct heir born to a bonded alpha carrier within the Torrick primary line inherited full succession rights to the original empire. Not the public corporation. Not the legal holdings that showed up in financial disclosures. The original empire. The one built before regulations existed. The one worth 11 times what Torrick holdings showed on paper. And the unborn child currently sleeping inside Kaelion's body 70 feet down the hall. Qualified. Draven set the document down. Picked it up again. Read the clause a third time as if the words might change. They didn't. He thought about the forged divorce papers. The timing of them. Appearing exactly 4 months after the bond was registered, exactly when a pregnancy would have become biologically possible. He thought about Kaelion disappearing and nobody inside the organization reporting it as a crisis. He thought about 14 months of investigators hitting walls that shouldn't have existed. Walls cost money. Walls that sophisticated cost relationships. Someone hadn't just forged documents. Someone had read this clause. And decided the easiest solution was making sure the bonded carrier and the heir inside him simply ceased to exist inside Draven's world. He stood up. Walked to the window. Chicago at 3 a.m. was quieter but not silent. There was always something moving down there, always some lights still on. He had built 3 buildings visible from this window. His grandfather had built 2 more. The empire his child stood to inherit. The empire someone was willing to commit multiple crimes to protect from that inheritance. He needed to know who. The answer was already forming at the back of his mind like something he had been refusing to look at directly. He kept refusing. Because looking at it directly meant accepting something that would require a response he was not ready to give. He pulled up the encrypted surveillance file his team had sent 2 hours ago. Footage recovered from the parking structure camera near the Black Lantern Grill. Timestamp from 6 days before the window exploded. The resolution was poor. But the angle was clear enough. 2 figures. One of them was Silas Wren. Draven watched the footage. Watched it again. Silas was not on duty that day. He had not yet been assigned to Kaelion's detail. The meeting lasted 90 seconds. The other figure kept their face angled deliberately away from the camera. Trained behavior, not accident. But the hand that passed the folded document to Silas was wearing a specific ring. Draven recognized it immediately. He had seen that ring his entire childhood. Every Sunday dinner. Every family meeting. Every moment that mattered. His hands went flat against the table. He did not move for a long time. Then, from down the hall, he heard it. Kaelion's voice, low, half asleep, the way he talked to the baby at night when he thought no one could hear. "We're going to be okay," Kaelion was saying. "I promise." Draven closed the footage file. Walked to the hallway. Stood outside Kaelion's door for 40 seconds. Then said quietly through the wood, "There's something I have to tell you in the morning." Silence. Then Kaelion's voice, fully awake. "Tell me now." The door opened. And Draven told him everything. The power went out at 11:47 p.m. Not a flicker. Not a warning. Total. Instant. The kind of outage that doesn't happen by accident in a building with 3 redundant electrical systems and a backup generator that was supposed to activate within 4 seconds. It didn't activate. That was the first sign. Kaelion was standing in the kitchen when it happened, glass of water in his hand, back aching, unable to sleep after everything Draven had told him 3 nights earlier. The darkness came down complete, and he stood perfectly still, listening, because he had learned over 18 months that stillness was sometimes the difference between being found and not being found. Voices in the hallway. Guards. Calm but clipped. Moving fast. Then Draven's voice, closer. Kaelion. Don't move. He hadn't moved. Draven came through the kitchen doorway with a tactical flashlight. Not a phone light, an actual flashlight, the kind that meant he kept one within reach. And swept the room once before crossing to Kaelion's side. Generator should have kicked in. It didn't. I know. His jaw was set. That means someone cut the override. Someone inside the building. The thought arrived in Kaelion's chest like cold water. Not someone outside. Not a remote attack. Someone who had access to the building's internal systems. Someone who knew the backup override location, which was not public information, which was not in any building schematic that existed outside Draven's private operations team. Silas, Kaelion said quietly. Draven didn't answer immediately. That pause answered everything. Where is he? Kaelion said. Last check-in was 20 minutes ago. East corridor. Draven was already moving toward the hallway. Stay here. Don't open. Don't tell me to stay. Kaelion followed him. If something is happening to this baby because I stayed in a room, I will never forgive myself or you. Draven stopped. Turned. Looked at him for 2 full seconds. Then, stay behind me. Exactly behind me. They moved into the hallway. 2 guards were already positioned at the main entrance, weapons out, using the emergency lighting strips near the floor to navigate. Remy appeared from the stairwell door, breathing hard, face tight. Stairwell B. Someone cut the camera feeds floor by floor starting from the parking structure. We have a 30-second gap in coverage between floors 68 and 73. 30 seconds was enough. More than enough. Draven said. Find Silas. Remy hesitated 1/2 second too long. Remy. He's not responding to comms, sir. The hallway went very quiet. Kaelion's hand pressed against his stomach, not performing anything, just needing something solid. The baby was still. That deep, waiting stillness. Then the east corridor door opened. Silas stepped through. He looked wrong immediately. Not injured, not panicked, but wrong in the specific way that a person looks wrong when they are carrying the weight of a decision they already made and cannot take back. His hands were visible. Weapon holstered. He stopped when he saw Draven looking at him. There's someone on 69, Silas said. His voice was completely steady. Armed. 2 of them. They came up through the service access. How do you know which floor? Draven said. Not a question. Silas held his gaze. Because I'm the one who confirmed the route was clear. Everything stopped. Kaelion heard Draven's breathing change, controlled, deliberate, the kind of breathing that replaced something much more volatile. You confirmed the route was clear. Draven repeated. To get them in. Yes. Silas didn't look away. Because I needed them inside the building before your outer security realized what was happening. Because the only way to identify who sent them was to let them reach the floor. He paused. I know what that sounds like. It sounds like betrayal, Draven said. It looks like it. Silas reached slowly into his jacket, one hand, deliberate, and produced a phone. Extended it toward Draven. That's the contact chain. 47 messages. The person who gave me the access codes did not know I was recording every communication. Draven didn't take the phone yet. Why should I believe anything you're telling me right now? Silas looked at Kaelion. Because if I wanted him dead, he said quietly. I have had opportunities every day for 2 weeks. Silence. Then a sound from the stairwell. Close. Moving up. Draven took the phone from Silas's hand. Passed it directly to Remy. Then turned to face the stairwell door as it opened. The man who came through was dressed in building maintenance. Convincing, if you didn't know what you were looking at. He raised his weapon. He did not get to use it. Draven moved with a speed that made the darkness look like it was on his side. The confrontation lasted 11 seconds. When it ended, the man was on the floor, alive, wrist broken, weapon gone. His partner had already turned back down the stairwell. Draven looked down at the man on the floor. Who sent you? The man's breathing was ragged. He looked at the ceiling. Then at Draven. And he said a name. Draven went very still. Kaelion watched his face. Watched the moment when controlled expression became something else entirely. Something that looked like grief. Say it again, Draven said. The man said it again. And in the east corridor, the single emergency light above them flickered once. Then went dark. Draven did not sleep. Not that night. Not the night after. Kaelion watched him from the couch on the second morning, Draven at the kitchen table, the phone Silas had produced open in front of him, the document with the succession clause beside it, a coffee that had gone cold 2 hours ago untouched. He had not asked Kaelion to leave the room. That was new. The old Draven, the one from their marriage, the one who processed everything alone behind closed doors and came out with decisions already made, would have sent Kaelion somewhere comfortable and handled it privately. This version sat at the table with him in the room. That mattered. Kaelion was not ready to say it out loud yet. But it mattered. The room, Kaelion said finally. Draven looked up. You said you'd show me. 2 nights ago. Kaelion shifted his weight carefully on the couch. The one off the east hallway. A pause. Then Draven stood up. He led Kaelion down the east hallway, past the room Silas had been using as a security station, to a door at the very end that Kaelion had assumed was a utility closet. Draven pressed his thumb to the small panel beside the handle. The door opened. Kaelion stood in the doorway for a long moment without speaking. It was a nursery. Not staged. Not decorative. Actually built. A real room, designed for a real child, with a real crib against the wall and shelving already installed and soft overhead lighting and a rocking chair positioned near the window with a clear sight line to the crib. There was a small blanket folded over the crib railing. Yellow. The same color as the socks in the storage room. Kaelion's throat closed completely. When? He managed. Month 7. Draven stood in the doorway behind him. After the investigators confirmed the bond record manipulation. After I understood what I was looking for. He paused. After I accepted that you were alive somewhere and had been surviving the pregnancy without anything I should have been providing. Kaelion walked to the rocking chair. Sat down slowly, carefully, one hand on his stomach. You built this room while I was sleeping on a storage room floor. Yes. And you never told me you were looking for me. I didn't know how to find you. And I was afraid. He stopped. Kaelion looked up. Afraid that if I found you and you didn't want to come back, I had no right to ask you to. The room was very quiet. Outside, Chicago moved at its regular speed, indifferent, enormous, unbothered by the specific weight of this specific silence. Kaelion looked at the yellow blanket. Thought about the yellow socks. Thought about the river where he'd thrown the wedding ring. You handled everything badly, he said. Yes. The emotional distance. The coldness. Even before the papers, there were months where I felt like I was living with someone who had already decided to leave but hadn't said it out loud yet. Draven didn't defend it. Yes. That's what made it easy for someone to make me believe you would do this. The silence after that one landed differently. Because it was true. And they both knew it. Draven crossed the room. Did not sit. Just stood near the window. Not blocking it, not hovering, close enough that Kaelion could have reached out and touched his arm if he chose to. He didn't choose to. Not yet. I thought coldness was protection, Draven said. I thought if I didn't show how much something mattered, it was safer. For you. For me. For whatever we were building. He looked at the crib. I was wrong about that in ways I'm still calculating. Kaelion exhaled slowly. The baby shifted. And then Kaelion's entire body locked up in a way that was completely different from stress or fear. His hand went flat against his stomach. Draven. The tone of that single word changed the room instantly. Draven was already moving. How far apart? I think it just started. Remy. Draven's voice carried down the hall at full volume without a single tremor in it. Then, quieter, directly to Kaelion. Look at me. Right here. I've got you. Kaelion looked at him. The Alpha who had built a nursery alone in an empty penthouse while the Omega he'd bonded to slept on a storage room floor across the city. The man who had searched for 14 months and never stopped. I'm scared, Kaelion said. I know. Draven crouched in front of the rocking chair, both hands carefully framing Kaelion's face. So am I. First time he had ever admitted that. Remy appeared in the doorway. One look. One nod. The car was already running. The hospital locked down at 4:17 a.m. Not because of the birth. Because of the 4 men in medical scrubs who entered through the ambulance bay at 4:09 and did not appear on any staff roster for that shift. Kaelion didn't know that yet. He was in the delivery room, monitors beeping, lights too bright, a nurse named Draven working with calm efficiency while the lead doctor spoke in measured sentences designed to keep panic out of the air. The labor had accelerated faster than anyone wanted. The baby was early. Not dangerously early, the doctor said, but the word dangerously still entered the room and stayed there. Draven stood at Kaelion's left side. He had not moved from that position since they arrived. His hand was in Kaelion's, not holding it gently, not performing comfort. Actually holding it. Grip firm. Steady. The kind of steadiness that takes real effort to maintain when everything underneath it is anything but. You're doing it, Draven said. Low. Direct. Right now. You're doing it. Kaelion's jaw was tight. I know. Just keep looking at me. I am looking at you. Keep doing that. Outside the delivery room, Kaelion could not hear what was happening in the underground parking structure. The 4 men in scrubs had made it to the second sub-level before Remy's team found them. What followed lasted 6 minutes and damaged 2 vehicles and produced 1 security guard with a dislocated shoulder and 3 of the 4 intruders on the ground before the 4th attempted the stairwell. He didn't make it far. Inside the delivery room, the monitor spiked. The doctor said something in a tone that made Draven move faster. Draven's grip tightened. Eyes on me, he said to Kaelion. Just here. Just us. Kaelion kept his eyes on Draven. And at 4:51 a.m., 42 minutes after the hospital lockdown activated and 6 minutes after the last intruder was contained, the baby cried. One sound. Sharp and immediate and entirely healthy. The room shifted. That was the only way to describe it. The quality of the air changed. The doctor's shoulders dropped. Draven exhaled something that might have been a laugh. The monitors kept beeping, but they beeped differently now. Less urgent, more rhythmic, more like something that was just going to keep going. Draven did not move for a full 3 seconds. He stood very still beside Kaelion's bed and stared at the infant that Draven was wrapping efficiently in a receiving blanket. Then something happened to his face. It broke open. No other description for it. The control, all the engineered stillness, the 11 years of cultivated alpha composure, it simply gave way. His eyes went wet. His jaw worked once. And then Draven Torrick, who had never broken expression in front of anyone in his adult life, covered his mouth with one fist and stood in the corner of a hospital delivery room and fell completely apart. Quietly. Almost silently. But completely. Kaelion watched him. Exhausted, still trembling, every part of his body wrung out past what he thought his limit was. Watching Draven break open like that. Trayvon placed the infant in Draven's arms first. Instinct, maybe, or just proximity. And Draven received the child with both hands like something irreplaceable. The baby had Kaelion's coloring. And Draven's eyes. Wide open, already looking. Already deciding what he thought about the world. For 23 minutes, the nightmare seemed finished. The monitors hummed. Trayvon moved quietly around the room. Draven sat in the chair beside Kaelion's bed with the infant against his chest, one huge hand spread across the child's entire back, not speaking. Then the hospital intercom activated. Not a normal announcement. A lockdown code. Trayvon stopped moving. The doctor looked up from the chart. Draven's head lifted. And from down the hall, running footsteps, 2 sets, Remy's voice came through the door before the door opened. The nursery. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Because Draven looked down at the infant in his arms. Still there. Still breathing. Still looking at the world with those wide, deciding eyes. But the lockdown code was specifically for the nursery wing. Which meant something had happened in there before the baby was brought back to Kaelion's room. Something had been left behind. Or someone had been waiting. Remy pushed the door open fully. His face was tight in a specific way that meant the situation had already moved past containment. East exit, he said. Someone's at the east exit. Draven was already standing. He placed the infant in Kaelion's arms. Careful, deliberate, making sure Kaelion had him secure, and then looked at Kaelion for exactly 2 seconds. No words. Just that look. Then he moved toward the door. Silas was at the east exit. Standing in the corridor outside the stairwell door, both hands visible, the infant's receiving blanket folded over one arm, empty. He had not taken the child. He was holding the blanket that had been left behind in the nursery when the alarm triggered. He was not alone. Behind him, 3 feet back, stood a woman. Draven stopped walking the moment he saw her. The corridor was narrow. Fluorescent lights. The kind of light that hides nothing. She stood in it without flinching, elegant, composed, wearing a coat that cost more than most people's monthly rent, a ring on her right hand that Draven had watched across Sunday dinner tables his entire childhood. His mother. Zenobia Torrick. She looked at her son. Then past him, toward the direction of Kaelion's room. You were always too attached to him, she said. Not cruel. Almost tired. Like she had been carrying this decision for a long time and was relieved, finally, to put it down. The bond was manageable. A child changes the structure permanently. Draven said nothing. The succession clause would have destabilized everything your grandfather built. Everything I spent 30 years maintaining. She looked at Silas. I gave you specific instructions. You gave me access codes, Silas said. I used them differently than you planned. Her expression shifted slightly. I see. The 47 messages are in evidence, Draven said. His voice was completely flat. Every instruction. Every payment. Every communication you ran through 3 different intermediaries because you knew I'd trace a direct line. He took 1 step forward. The forged divorce papers. The surveillance on Kaelion for 18 months. The men in the parking structure tonight. The hit authorized against the pregnant Omega. Another step. My Omega. Carrying my child. Your grandchild. Zenobia did not step back. You would have lost control of the Empire, she said. I would have shared it. That's the same thing. The corridor held its silence for a moment that seemed to expand past the walls. Remy and 2 guards had appeared at the far end. Not moving yet. Waiting. Silas stayed exactly where he was. Zenobia looked at her son one more time. The way a person looks at something they built, and decided they could not afford to love more than they loved the structure surrounding it. I did what was necessary, she said. You tried to erase my family, Draven said. You tried to erase a child that had not yet taken a single breath outside of his father's body. His voice did not rise. It did not need to. Remy. The guards moved. Zenobia did not resist. She straightened her coat, walked toward them with the same composure she had maintained through every family meeting, every crisis, every Sunday dinner where the ring on her hand caught the light. She passed Draven without looking at him again. He watched her go. Did not move for a long time after she disappeared around the corridor corner. Then Silas said quietly, She recruited me 8 months ago. Before you found Kaelion. Before the detail was assigned. She believed I would follow through. He paused. I had every intention of following through. Until I actually met him. Draven turned. Silas looked at the floor briefly, then back up. The first week. He was talking to the baby. Middle of the night, thought nobody could hear. Saying, It's going to be okay. Either of us needs him. A pause. I had a mother who said that to me about my father once. Different circumstances. Another pause. I stopped being able to do it after that. Draven held his gaze for a long moment. You should have come to me. You would have been right to not believe me. That was true. He walked back down the corridor. Back toward the room. The door was open. The monitors were still running. Kaelion was sitting up in the hospital bed, the infant held against his chest, both of them still. The baby's eyes were open. Draven stood in the doorway. Kaelion looked up at him. It was her, Kaelion said. Not a question. Yes. A pause. Is it over? Draven crossed the room. Pulled the chair close to the bed. Sat down so he was level with Kaelion, not standing over him, not positioned above him. The immediate threat. Yes. But... He looked at his son. At the wide, already deciding eyes that were currently pointed at the ceiling light with tremendous focus and zero concern for the world that had tried to eliminate him before he could breathe air. There are people who benefited from that succession clause staying buried, Draven said. Zenobia was the one who acted. She was not the only one who wanted the same outcome. Kaelion exhaled slowly. The baby made a small sound, not crying, something more like commentary. Despite everything. Despite the exhaustion and the fluorescent light, and the corridor outside where the machinery of something enormous had just begun to turn in their direction. Kaelion almost smiled. He has your opinions, he said. Draven looked at his son. At Kaelion? At the 2 people he had failed to protect and spent 14 months trying to rebuild the right to stand beside again. I need you to know something, he said. Not as an alpha. Not as anything the Empire made me. He looked directly at Kaelion. I am done choosing structures over people. Done choosing distance over truth. Whatever comes next, the war, the succession, all of it, I am not handling it alone and I am not handling it without you. Kaelion looked at him for a long time. The baby made another sound. Definitive. Final. Like a period at the end of a sentence. Okay, Kaelion said. Just that. but the way he said it meant something much larger than the word itself. Draven reached out. His hand covered Kaelion's on the blanket, the same way it had covered the baby's kick in the storage room weeks ago, steady, certain, going nowhere. They sat like that as Chicago morning light started at the window. Quiet. Finally, genuinely quiet. But somewhere outside, in the infrastructure of an $11 billion empire with a buried succession clause and a newly born heir and a web of loyalties that Zenobia Torrick had spent 30 years building and protecting, phones were already ringing. The real war had not ended. It had only just found its reason to begin. If this story moves something in you, share it. Leave a thought in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear that love handled badly can still find its way back. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story on this channel. Every chapter, every voice, every word, it is all here for you. See you in the next one.